Hello everyone. Seeing participants roll on in. Welcome, welcome. Welcome. Thank you guys for joining. While we give everyone a few minutes to join, please feel free to share where you're tuning in from in the chat, and if you've applied the multifamily residential scorecard to a student housing project before. I am tuning in from New York City, and I have worked with clients on applying a student housing project to the multifamily residential scorecard, but I have actually not ever submitted one myself. Welcome, welcome. Thank you all for joining. Please feel free to drop in the chat where you're tuning in from, and if you've ever used the multifamily scorecard at all or with a student housing project before. Welcome. Thank you for joining. Giving everyone a few minutes, and feel free to drop where you're tuning in from in the chat. Welcome. Oh, London. Exciting. Edinburgh. That's awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. Hi, Ray. Welcome, everyone. As you can see, some people are putting where they're tuning in from in the chat, and if they've used multifamily residential scorecard before, used it for a student housing project before. Welcome, Italy. Wonderful. Very exciting. We'll give people a few more minutes to join. Oh, hi, Maura. We have some fans, Vicky. We'll give people a few more minutes to join. But yes, please feel free to share where you're tuning in from in the chat, and any experience with the multifamily residential scorecard. Thank you guys for joining. Lots of people from the UK. Very exciting. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I think we will get started in just a minute. All right, I will hop in now, but feel free to keep sharing where you're tuning in from. Thank you again for joining us today. To start, I will kick us off with some brief introductions. I am Virginia. I'm a senior relationship manager on the Fitwel client engagement team. I have been on the Fitwel team for over 2.5 years now and really love working with our amazing clients and celebrating all of your accomplishments. Today, we will walk and talk through our newly updated V3 Applicability Matrix, and we will then be joined by Vicky Woodward, expert Fitwel consultant with DLC Europe, to talk through her experience with a particularly exciting application of Fitwel, which is student housing. I will hand it over to Vicky to briefly introduce herself before diving in.
Thank you so much, Virginia. I'm actually truly honored to take part today. I'm a senior consultant with DLC Europe, and I've been working on Fitwel certification since 2021. I am very proud that I've made the global top 20 ambassadors for the last 2 years. And fingers crossed for this year. I've worked in construction since the late 90s after a spell in the armed forces, and my current role, focused on ESG, kind of makes career number 3. So, a fun fact, I previously worked on various television shows, including Big Brother, as a health and safety consultant.
Wow. Thank you, Vicky. We're so honored to have you. I love your fun fact. I didn't know that. Very, very cool. We will see you back here in a few minutes. As mentioned, today we will dive into our V3 applicability matrix, how it can support your Fitwel projects, and how student housing Fitwel applications work from an expert point of view. Let's get started. To begin, today we hope to help users understand and effectively use the V3 Fitwel Applicability Matrix. This tool is valuable because it simplifies the process of selecting the right Fitwel scorecard for certification and enables users to kick off their projects with confidence. The Applicability Matrix is an offline structured resource that provides guidance on selecting the appropriate Fitwel scorecard for various project types, helping users align their unique project typologies with Fitwel scorecards and certification pathways. As we go through the webinar, please feel free to drop any questions in the Q&A section or in the chat. We'll try to answer any and all questions before we end the session, and if not, we will follow up. So we will start on the Help Center and review where to find the V3 Applicability Matrix once it's published. It is going to be hopefully published by the end of the day today, but I wanted to click into the Help Center really quickly as a reminder for anyone who isn't familiar, just to show you where to find it. There are also valuable resources for both V2.1 and V3 projects available in the Help Center in general. So Kenny will drop that link in the chat. So if you know what you're looking for, oops, we lost our screen share. Sorry, 1 second.
Sorry, one moment.
We'll get the Help Center right back up and running. But if you know where to go, you can navigate to the Getting Started section, which is one of the main banners there. Yep, there we are. We're back there. Perfect. If you actually know where you're looking for, you can navigate to the appropriate section, or you can use the search function to input a resource, strategy name, or a question when you want to find information you need. Since the V3 Applicability Matrix is a tool to help you select the appropriate scorecard for your project, we will navigate to the Getting Started section to find it. It will also be available under the Scorecard Checklist section under the Welcome to V3 section. So if we go back to the main page, we'll be able to see where you could also find it under the Welcome to V3 section. So there'll be 2 places that this will be published. Again, end of day today. We should have it up and running. Thank you for sharing those links, Kenny, and thanks for navigating for me, Whitney. So without further ado, we are going to pull up the Applicability Matrix and walk it through in real time. As you can see, there are 5 tabs that organize the content in this resource. The first tab is an overview and instructions on how to use the resource, defining key terms. Importantly, the Fitwel Applicability Matrix provides guidance on which Fitwel certification pathway and scorecard is the right fit for your project typology. Although Fitwel does not have a turnkey product for every building and project typology, there may be other ways to use the existing Fitwel scorecards and products to extend the Fitwel health impacts to your spaces. The remaining tabs we will talk through are the certification pathways, applicability matrix, scorecard definitions, and mixed use tabs. So first up, we will discuss the certification pathways. Fitwel offers 2 main certification pathways, built certification and design certification. On this tab, you can find out which pathway is the right one to choose for your product. The built certification pathway applies to projects that, you guessed it, are already built. This means that the project is completed and officially occupied. The design certification pathway applies to projects that are currently in the design stage, under construction, under partial renovation, or recently completed but not yet occupied. The key in determining which pathway to choose is whether the project is occupied. There are also sections on project type and certification type within this tab. These clarify the type of building, single building or connected building versus site applications. For context, the main difference between a building and site certification is that for buildings, the certification applies to projects made up of 1 or more buildings or commercial tenant spaces within a building. It encompasses both the interior of the building and the select components of the exterior spaces and surrounding areas within the project. On the other hand, site certifications apply to a district or neighborhood scale projects, certifying commercial and or residential land that is contiguous and owned or managed by a single entity. It encompasses outdoor areas only and does not apply to the interiors of buildings within the site. Lastly, the certification type section distinguishes asset certification versus FSP, our scale pathway. Select asset certification to achieve a star rating for your property using the Fitwel scorecard applicable to your asset. Asset star rating certification includes plaques and certificates, recognition, promotes tenant satisfaction and builds trust with investors, a gap analysis providing an evidence-based roadmap for targeted improvements, certified assets reinforce leadership in health and sustainability, and certification valid for 3 years with a discounted recertification opportunity, and of course, no prerequisites. Select FSP to implement Fitwel at scale within your portfolio using the Fitwel scorecard applicable to your asset. FSP includes peer benchmarking, which promotes market differentiation. Health promoting strategies attract and retain tenants. Performance report data reveals actionable insights. Portfolio scale approach captures 100% of portfolios. The certification is valid for 1 year, and there's no threshold for certification. Facilitates the implementation of FSP. So a lot of content on this page that overviews all of our product pathways and types. And the next tab, Applicability Matrix, will dive into each scorecard and the exact typologies that they can be applicable to. As you can see on this tab, we have several different asset types listed in columns B and C. Then in column D, we show that if you can use Fitwel for this asset type or not. In column E, you will see the recommended scorecard for that asset type. In columns F and G, determine whether the asset type can be pursued on both asset certification and or FSP, our scale pathway. Lastly, column H will show any guidance related to applying that asset type to the Fitwel scorecard. As an example, which is relevant to our Q&A portion with Vicky, in just a few minutes, we can talk through row 18, which discusses apartment-style student housing applicability. As you can see, yes, it can qualify for Fitwel certification, and the recommendation for the scorecard is the multifamily residential scorecard. This typology can also be applied to Fitwel with both asset certification and the FSP scale pathway.
Is Virginia frozen for everyone else? I just want to check. I'm happy to jump in, but I just want to check. Okay, great. Well, I will jump in real quick while Virginia gets back online. I'll go on camera. So I am Whitney Nielsen. I usually host these best practice sessions with either Virginia or Anna. So I'll kind of hop in where she left off in terms of the applicability matrix. So we were talking about student housing today. So the apartment style student housing can be applied to our multifamily residential scorecard, as Virginia mentioned. And this, we'll just kind of go through what the guidance looks like so you have an idea of what it will look like when you go through and look for other typologies. So I'll read this one here. So the apartment style student housing building that contains multiple private dwelling units, each with bedrooms, bathrooms, kitchens, and a minimum of at least one indoor shared space under building management or control, can pursue Fitwel using this MFR scorecard. And you can refer then, this is where we tell you to jump back to those checklists and really take a look at the definition and guidance on the definitions tab so you know the areas of impact and occupants. Virginia, I'll just finish reading this one and then I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you. My internet went out. So sorry, everyone.
Yeah, no
We're back
worries.
on.
The beauty of virtual work. And then really lastly, student housing complexes such as garden style apartments, duplexes, or townhomes cannot use this MFR scorecard, but you may certify the entire complex as a community using community site scorecard. And there's some alternative pathways on FSP as well. So if you ever have any questions about utilizing Fitwel with those specific unique typologies, feel free to reach out to any of us on the team, info at, ambassador at, or a relationship manager to chat more about that. And then refer to asset type in this section for specific guidance for those, since we do list those unique typologies on the applicability matrix. I'll hand it back over to you, Virginia.
Wonderful. Thank you guys. Sorry about that. I think I'm on some stable ground here with my internet, so we should be good going forward. Okay, so next tab, we're on scorecard definitions, right? Great. Okay, so we have another tab here, the scorecard definitions tab. Fitwel offers multiple scorecards to accommodate various typologies, as we have seen. Use this tab to understand the impact and implementation scope of the scorecards and as a reference to supplement the applicability table. If we continue with the student housing example that we have been discussing, as we know, the recommended scorecard is the multifamily residential scorecard. If we scroll down to that section of the scorecard definitions tab, we will see that by definition, this scorecard is applicable to residential buildings that contain multiple dwelling units and a minimum of one indoor shared space. That falls under the control of the management, including student housing applications. Further, when you were looking at the areas of impact of this scorecard on a building, all interior spaces on all floors of the building, including spaces under control of the building owner and manager, common elevator banks and restrooms controlled by the landlord or owner, and all common areas. All residential units and all on-site exterior spaces accessible to residents, such as courtyards, rooftops, parking areas, and others. And lastly, the occupants that are impacted are all occupants of all residential units in the building. This means the strategy applies to these residents in particular when we're thinking about who's being impacted by these strategies. And lastly, on the applicability matrix, we have a tab specifically for guidance around mixed-use buildings. At this time, Fitwel does not offer a mixed-use scorecard. So to certify any mixed-use projects, project teams may register the project under 2 or more scorecards as applicable. This table will provide guidance on how to implement this application. As you can see, in column B shows the mixed-use type. We can talk through the first one as an example. The residential/retail mixed-use type would be defined as a residential tower with a retail base. To certify both spaces, the scorecards to use are the multifamily residential scorecard and the retail scorecard. To implement the multifamily residential scorecard, as shown in column E, certify the residential areas and dwelling units with the multifamily residential scorecard separately. Exclude the retail space when applying the scorecard. The building must not allocate more than 20% of rentable area for non-residential uses. Please note that you can use the retail spaces for credit towards some amenity-based strategies. The space is just not considered within the scope of being certified if you're under a multifamily residential scorecard. To implement the retail scorecard for the retail portion of the project, make sure to exclude residential areas and dwelling units when applying the scorecard. Certify the retail spaces separately. Please make sure to review this resource for all guidance needed when choosing the pathway and scorecard. So overall, that's the applicability matrix. There's a lot of content in there that's hopefully very helpful to guide you and your clients through this process of choosing how to proceed with Fitwel. It's defined to assist you in your offline product selection and benchmarking. The online or digital equivalent to selecting which pathway would be our newly launched product selection wizard, which is a functionality that has recently been built into our platform. To learn more about this wizard, please reference our January best practice webinar for an overview of the digital product selection tool. Thanks, Kenny, for sharing that in the chat. We are so excited for you to use our new applicability matrix in selecting your projects. A little plug, as you might know, for just a few more days, you will receive an extra 10% discount on new project fees using the code FitwelBP10 in honor of our first few best practice sessions through March 31st. So make sure to apply this code to your invoices and payments upon registrations before the end of the month. Now we will transition to the very exciting student housing spotlight portion of the session. I am inviting Vicky back to join me and discuss key insights on applying the Fitwel multifamily scorecard to student housing projects. We are so excited to hear your perspective on applying this and other scorecards to properties in Europe and beyond. So, as we discussed during the V3 applicability matrix overview, the scorecard that is applicable to student housing assets is the multifamily residential scorecard. So we'll be focusing on real-life applicability today. To kick us off, I thought it would be fun to share some stats we have around the usage of the multifamily residential scorecard globally, and specifically in Europe and the UK. We have a total of 471 multifamily projects in progress globally and an additional 541 certified. We have 75 of these MFR projects in progress just in Europe and an additional 67 certified in Europe. Lastly, we have 48 projects in progress in the UK and 31 additional certified already just in the UK. It's really exciting to see these numbers, many of them being student housing projects. For some additional context around what these numbers mean, we have seen an average of 101% growth year over year in certifications achieved across all of the multifamily scorecards. In 2024, we saw over 160 multifamily projects certify, which is the highest total in 1 year since the scorecard was piloted in 2018. Very exciting things. Clearly, there's a demand in the market. Now let's dive into a key application of the scorecard, student housing. I will get us starting with our Q&A portion of the day. Vicky, thank you so much again for joining us. You've been an invaluable resource to clients certifying Fitwel for many years now, and we're so excited to gain your perspective on student housing today. To kick us off as our expert today, what challenges are student housing assets facing that Fitwel helps solve for? For example, what are the most important focus areas for this asset type? How does Fitwel meet these demands and help the client or asset achieve their goals?
Okay. So the challenge, as ever, is to meet the expectations of the students who are going to be living in these buildings and the needs of the staff who are going to be based there to support them, but with a firm eye on the health and well-being of all of them, and at the same time ensuring the best return for investors, which does factor in a little bit. Students now are very aware, for example, of mental health challenges, of what they need and even demand for their own well-being, and also for the resilience of their accommodation. So at the end of the day, whether it's apartments for families or for students, we are talking about creating homes. And Fitwell certification gives us clear goals that would meet those challenges. And if we don't actually achieve them all first time round on the first certification, then we get a nice clear roadmap based on the opportunities identified for continued improvement.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I love the insight into even though you may not score amazingly 3 stars on that first time around, you can still set very clear goals for continued improvement. We talk about this a lot, so I'm glad that you have noticed that as well. On that same note, as mentioned, we're seeing an increase in the demand for applying Fitwel to student housing projects. Can you share your experience applying the multifamily residential scorecard to student housing projects more?
Sure. So over the last 4 years, I've personally completed 16 successful certifications. I've collaborated with my colleagues on 15 more, and I'm currently working on 12 right now. And of those 43, if you do a quick bit of mental arithmetic, 21 have been or are student housing projects. So basically half of them. Yeah. They've all been within the UK, Ireland, some in Spain, Italy, and even Canada. But I found the MFR scorecard, in my experience, provides a really good fit for students' homes, particularly the new version 3 with its additional focus on social value. That's important to students. Biodiversity, that's important to them. Civic engagement, also important to them. And in addition to the strategies we're normally familiar with, like outdoor fitness, acoustic comfort, and so on. But the beauty of the Fitwel standard is that it can be easily applied whether it's families or students, and it permits you to design your own journey to certification.
Amazing insight again. I love the shout out to V3. It's great to hear your perspective of designing your own journey. That's something that as Fitwel we pride ourselves on is that you can really design how you want to proceed with this health impact journey. Speaking of a journey, what is something you've learned from applying Fitwel to the multifamily residential scorecard to student housing projects that impacts how you approach student housing certifications going forward? For example, do you document any strategies or approach them in a different way from a traditional multifamily residential tower?
Short answer is I don't have to approach them in a different way. For example, the student housing provider still has similar policies and procedures as the management company for a multifamily residential tower. The quality of fixtures and fittings in the building might differ due to the potential for increased wear and tear being student accommodation, but they still achieve the same purpose. So in terms of accessibility or noise reduction or lighting, I mean, and they're still aesthetically pleasing too, but perhaps they have a different mood board or design feel or color palette to family homes.
That makes sense. But that's a great perspective and nice to hear that this application doesn't require learning an entirely different set of skills, just because it might be different from a traditional tower. Hopefully that makes it feel less intimidating for those who are considering this typology. That will be very helpful for anyone who's considering Fitwel certification. On another note, what engagement and interaction do you have with students, if any? Do you work with a representative for these projects? Does your process look different when you're approaching a student housing project with the multifamily residential scorecard?
Well, personally, I have very limited interaction with the students, but what's important is the stakeholders involved for our certifications include the operators for these buildings and their input, that their expertise and their buy-in to the process is key. But I actually take the same approach when I'm leading any calls about Fitwel because I enjoy what I do and I'm enthusiastic about it. And I get delighted when the stakeholders pick up on that energy and they start asking questions and making suggestions for themselves, and then they really start getting excited about it.
Oh, that sounds fun. It's always nice to have people who are on the same energy as you, and it's also great to hear that you can get there with talking about Fitwel. You are a true ambassador. It is also nice to get a little insight into what the communication process is like during that scorecard documentation phase. So thank you for that. Further, I want to learn from you as a successful Fitwel provider for some impressive projects. From your perspective, what are the most impactful Fitwel tools that drive your success as a consultant? Let's first focus on tools that support you in implementing Fitwel.
So the portal has everything I need. Plus, you've also got the resource library, which is fabulous. The help center does exactly that. The submission workbooks were fab. And I'm looking forward to using the crosswalks on projects where they apply. The ambassador training was a great start, and I've been enjoying the continuing ambassador learning sessions. I mean, they've been really useful. I use maps features, no names, on the internet a great deal when I'm compiling evidence for strategies. And as for other tools, it's communication skills. Not every stakeholder has heard of Fitwel, and sometimes they might be a little initially reluctant. Perhaps it's the fear of the unknown. So I make it my mission to work with them to identify their roadblocks and remove them. But of course, the most obvious one is got to be my Fitwel account manager, because you cannot forget them. They're always ready to assist, to resolve queries, clarify points, go back to the certification team for you. That can't do without them.
That is so nice to hear and so validating. We also love working with you, and we're happy that we are, doing some good in your process. I also love the shout outs to the Help Center and the Ambassador Training Program. And our tech team will absolutely love to hear that you think the portal has absolutely everything, because that's what we're trying to do, working hard to make these resources helpful and resonating. We are so lucky to have such an enthusiastic advocate of Fitwel. Although you kind of already answered this, I'm curious about when you're pitching Fitwel to new clients. Do you tap into any of the tools available on our Help Center website, ambassador resources, to help you talk to new clients about Fitwel?
Absolutely. The information on all of those is invaluable. But even using the project directory to demonstrate what similar assets in similar locations are doing. And you've also got the rationale behind each strategy that's there and available to you too. And that's often been really helpful in explaining to a stakeholder why a strategy could or should be implemented.
I see. That's a great note actually about the project directory. That's available on our Fitwel website, not on the Help Center. So if anyone wants to take a look at the project directory, that's where you can find it. We love to hear it. And so much work goes into making those resources valuable and useful, as I said. Lastly, our last question before we let you go, what is the best piece of advice you can share with the group today regarding using Fitwel overall? This can be specific to multifamily residential, student housing projects, or just in general.
Use all the resources available. As tempting as it is to dive in on your own, there's a lot of help there. Take your time to check the evidence that you're uploading. If you're not sure about something, just ask. I mean, Fitwel are very approachable. This is one of the joys of the system. But above all, I would have to say, enjoy what you're doing. Enthusiasm and excitement are infectious, and that's the good kind of infectious. And if you can get stakeholders in your project as excited as you to provide the best home or workplace or community that supports health for all, that's just so satisfying.
And that's the core of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make buildings healthier, and having that resonate and sharing that enthusiasm, I can imagine, is the key. One of your many keys to success. But there you have it, straight from the expert herself. Invaluable insight. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your expertise, Vicky. We are so grateful to have you championing Fitwel. It's wonderful to hear that oh, yes. It's wonderful to hear that not only are your clients happy with the application of Fitwel to student housing projects, but that you also feel personal validation in guiding them through the process. It's helpful to know that Fitwel can give these typologies the tools to exceed and differentiate from their peers while elevating their positive health impact. We're excited to see multifamily residential scorecard is meeting the demand of student housing projects globally, as there is such a strong correlation between the health impacts, the value of the building, and the quality of the student's daily life. Thank you again, Vicky. That was super, you're wonderful. I just have a few other remarks to close with. Thank you for your time and reviewing the applicability matrix with me and the student housing Fitwel applicability. Thank you again, Vicky. I can't thank you enough. I'll actually take this time to see if there's any questions in the chat. Looks like Whitney answered most of them. Oh, wonderful. Thanks, Whitney. Anything in the Q&A? No. Okay. All right. You guys are easy. I'm gonna blab on about a few more things. But if there are any questions while I'm wrapping up, please feel free to put them in the chat. But otherwise, please reach out to us. As Kenny just dropped in the chat with some resources to reach out. Our next Intro to Fitwel session will be hosted by our colleague, Director of Center for Active Design, Sarah Carreret, on April 9th. So this is a true intro session, separate from the best practices session. But during this session, you'll learn the value that Fitwel brings to your properties, the healthy building strategies boost tenant and investor appeal, how they do that, the steps to start your Fitwel certification journey. We are determining our next best practice webinar, but stay tuned for that as well. And you can sign up for our newsletter, which announces these webinars, and the links will also be in those webinars. Lastly, we will be sending a follow-up email this week with a link to the recording of this session hosted on our Help Center. Kenny will share the link to where you can find this session, existing sessions, and any future sessions in case you can't make any live or wish to share with your colleagues. Amazing. I'm going to check if there's any more questions in here before I say goodbye. Amazing. Okay, I think we're covered. We appreciate your time, everyone. Thank you, and we hope you join us for our next sessions. Best of luck with your projects and have a great day. Thank you again, Vicky.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Happy Wednesday.